Bobby Brown, who is a private investigator and paralegal. And of course, Mr. Brown was talking to us about some of the issues that are involved in being a private investigator. And of course, let's look at some of the cases dealing with this anatomy of an injustice, some of the cases that might fit into the kind of thing that you do, Mr. Brown.
Okay. First, let me say that we're licensed by the state of Tennessee. That's the only way you can be a private investigator. In doing this, we've been in business, as I stated earlier, 20 years. And every now and then there's a case that we will go back that we will want to look at because there's just some things just ain't right. It just don't feel right. And we come up with this idea because I guess we look at cold case stories that's on TV. And we have one in mind that fits right along that. And the topic that we like to say is there a time limit on an injustice? I'm not trying to we're not trying to point a fault finger at anybody. But this case is of such a magnitude that it has to be revisited, and the whole thing of it need to be set out, because I believe not everybody knows about this case. And the case that I'm talking about was an injustice that happened January the 16th, 1968, here in Davidson County, Nashville, Tennessee, up on 4th and Hyman, 14th and Hyman. Unfortunately, 2 Metro police officers was killed there. Now, everybody's aware of 2 police officers being killed that day, but nobody knows what really actually happened because of presentations in court. There are certain things that the court will allow, certain things the court will not allow. And at that time period, it was a very thing that they did. The courts stripped the defense in being able to turn around and put on a case that would been productive. What I mean by that? Well, let's go back and re-examine 1968 January. Basically, it starts at the end of 1967 and goes into 1968. That's when people of color started to exercise their rights. I think some people want to say civil rights activists, and they want to say race rights. I don't see it that way. I see where people were trying to get their rights. And there was mass movements in the city of Nashville. Matter of fact, there were some people that came from outside of the state. They came down, they talked to students at Tennessee State University, at Fisk University, and I think they tried to get at Meharry, but those people there were far beyond, because they had careers and all of everything they had. Well, at that time period, there was a situation where it was necessary for the National Guard to be called out, and that started this, put this thing in, this starts this case. So now, when I say it starts the case, we got racial problems, and we got a whole lot of things going on within the city, and people within the know that's trying to curtail some things. Now, during that time period, I was in Vietnam fighting to make sure that people here could do anything that they wanted to do.
To enjoy the freedom.
Could enjoy the freedom. I didn't mind getting shot 7 times, because I know people here was going to enjoy the freedom. Now, I'm very disappointed in that, because that's not what happened. Now, let me go back to this case. Now, what started this whole thing was at 8:35, the morning of the 16th of January, 1968, there was a $75 money order cashed at Baldock's liquor store. Now, it was something wrong with that money order, but it wasn't, nobody knew about it until roughly about 8:30 or 9 o'clock that night, when another $75 money order was being brought to Baldock's to be cashed. At that time period, the owner, as well as the day manager, was there, and the owner told the young gentleman, "We know who you are, we want our $75 back, and we're going to hold on to this one." Well, the young man was frightened. He bolted out of Baldock's and went west on Jefferson Street. Now, the owner called Metro. There just happened to be a police officer that happened to be in his zone, and he immediately came to Baldock's liquor store. At Baldock's liquor store, the owner told him what happened. He turns around, gets on the horn. He calls his supervisor sergeant. And at that time period, he's meeting with another officer by the name of Officer Johnson. There's a conversation between this sergeant and Officer Johnson. Officer Johnson tells the sergeant he knows where that car is because the put-out was red Ford, Detroit, Michigan tags with 4 or 5 people, with parties in the vehicle. Okay? Now, this vehicle speeds west on Jefferson, going back towards 21st. That way, I'm trying to show distance and direction. All right? Now, while this is going on, Officer Johnson leaves from 8th and Jackson, drives the back way because you have to realize there was not no straight shot. You had to go to Charlotte to go across. All right? He goes down Charlotte, goes to 21st. He gets up by 21st and Hermosa. He looks down the bottom of the hill, and lo and behold, there is the red Ford sitting in on Hermosa in apartment A. Now, there are 3 apartment buildings down there. There's A, B, and C. Now, while Officer Johnson is calling his sergeant, the sergeant calls in 1 more officer. They come down, they do west on Jefferson, and then they get to 21st, and they go south on 21st, and they stop at 21st and Hermosa. Now, if you're familiar with the area, you'll notice it's a big parking lot there. So they could stay on 21st, north and south of it, look down the hill because it's an incline, and you could see everything that's going on down in that area. It covers A, B, and C. Now, the wild thing about this is that there is a white Plymouth Fury parked behind C in the back. Now, there were some gentlemen putting stuff in because they was loading this car, they was leaving. Now, all action was set at that red Ford. Now, officer, by this time period, they make the police, they decide which persons is going to do what. Officer Johnson leads, and then the rest of them follows, and they start coming down this hill. As they get just about maybe 100 meters on Hermosa, the white Plymouth that comes out behind building C hits the street, goes east on Hermosa. Officer Johnson says, I want that vehicle, and he immediately follows right behind that vehicle. There was a vehicle behind him. That vehicle spun out. There is another police vehicle that's up on the top of the hill that is facing west, which is Officer Thomason. The white Plymouth goes past Officer Thomason. There was some conversation, but nothing directed to say, stop that vehicle. Officer Johnson follows that vehicle, and he stops this vehicle at 14th and Herman.
Okay, well, let's stop it right here for our second commercial break, after which we'll come back and we'll pick up at that particular point.
Sure.
And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Topic is an anatomy